Great. Well, I want to thank you all for coming out to the symposium, and it's really nice to be back at Mizzou. And thank Greg for organizing this whole event and the whole college. It's near and dear to my heart as I'm an alum of the college. My grandmother was on the faculty at Mizzou. I think she started in 24 and retired in 1964 from the College of Home Economics. My mom was also an alum, and my daughter, Franny, is right over there. And she's a master's candidate in the College of Human and Environmental Science in the Department of Nutrition and Exercise Physiology. So that's 4 generations of Tiger girls. So today I want to talk about adding value at the farm level. We heard earlier from Dr. Westgren talk about collective entrepreneurship. And really my expertise is more working with individual farm families, sitting around a farm table, talking to husband and wife or the family about what they want to do to change their destiny. I do work out of my home with Jessica Ratcliffe, who is my assistant. She's my proofreader. Hopefully no document leaves my house without Jessica proofreading it, because sometimes I can't spell. And the bad news there is that she did not proofread this presentation. So here we go. So we're going to talk about adding value at the farm. I really think this is an important topic, especially for agroforestry, because I think there's so much untapped potential here in Missouri with our natural resources and our forest. The colleges here is a great launching pad for growing this industry, and I do think that right now there's tremendous potential for value adding. There's different methods of value adding. As the Lieutenant Governor alluded to, there's kind of a moving definition of what is value adding. Most of the farm families that I work with, they work on changing the value of the product, or changing the physical nature of the product. So they turn a hog into pork. They turn a live cattle into grass-fed beef packaged. They turn milk into cheese. They somehow transform it. But there's different ways to add value, including drawing attention to where a specific commodity is from, place-based marketing, and also local marketing. Those are, you don't change the form, but you market the product locally, and that is also considered value adding. One of the new ways that my consulting practice has really been growing in is the whole experience economy. And what is that? Well, if we start with a commodity or a good like apples, and you can sell the fresh apples for a certain price, you take that apple and you produce apple brandy. This is Jim Pierce's apple brandy. He's out in the lobby, and it's delicious stuff. I use it in a lot of different ways, so try it. But anyway, so you can change the product, the commodity, and turn it into a good. And that good can be sold maybe through a bar or restaurant, or maybe in a fancy restaurant as a cocktail, and you're adding more value. But the most potential that I see is to couple that good, that apple brandy, with an experience at the farm. And so you're not just selling a apple brandy, you're not just having the apple brandy served in a bar or restaurant, but you're bringing people to the farm. You're letting them look where the apples are raised. You're letting them see what you do with the pumice from the apples that are finished. And you're letting them taste the apple brandy on the farm, and you're teaching them something about agriculture. And that, to me, is where I think there's a lot of growth potential for Missouri and a lot of growth potential for not only Missouri agriculture, but Missouri tourism. So we get back to the basic question of why do we want to add value? There's different reasons that people want to get into adding value. And one of the big things that I think that value adding does is it connects you to the consumer. And that consumer could be a person at a farmer's market, it could be a chef, it could be somebody in the biotech industry that wants to buy your specialty herb. So there's a lot of different ways to add value. And what are the outcomes of adding value? What do you get from taking that product and transforming it in some way? To me, one of the main outcomes of value adding is resilience. There's a lot of flux in agriculture, especially with commodities, where prices go up and down, or like in the case of the dairy industry, prices just stay down. But there's a lot of flux. And it's hard to manage your business if you are dependent on fluctuating market prices and you're dependent on fluctuating weather and all these outcomes. But what adding value does is it creates resilience at the farm level. It sometimes creates a steady flow of income throughout the year. It creates additional revenue. And in the case of Adam, he's taking his number 2 apples that have been damaged some way because of a minor blemish, and they're not appropriate for the dessert fruit market. So he's taking those and processing those into fresh cider. So there's a lot of different ways to add value, but one of the main outcomes of adding value is resilience. Another reason or another outcome of adding value is continuity. Many of my farm families that I work with are looking for something to do with the next generation. They want to tie in their son or their daughter or their brother, and they want to create a job for them, and they want them to come back to the farm. And this, to me, is one of the reasons that I think it's really compelling to keep value added going in Missouri. And I think it's so important to keep continuity in farm families. And if we can do that by fostering value added agriculture, then I think it's a win-win situation. This is a family. I know this is this is Missouri. But I do a lot of work in North Carolina because that's where my husband's family's from. But this family started a dairy. They weren't always dairy producers, but they started the dairy, and then they decided to get into processing ice cream on the farm and selling milk. And now they've got a really rock and roll business where they sell people line up on Saturdays for an ice cream cone. They sell milk to the local grocery stores, and they also sell their ice cream. So they've really created layers, and they've also created jobs for a lot of their children on the farm. And the children's jobs might not be on the farm. They might be related in another area of the state or another area. But it's that whole providing continuity is a great outcome of value adding. I'm not a academic, so I don't really know the statistics on the best opportunities in value adding. What I'm telling you is like anecdotal evidence from my observations from my home office. But what I see is there's tremendous opportunities in native food products, not just in the food industry, but in the whole consumer product industry. That is, do you guys know who that is? Joe Wilson. So Joe was my first client 20 years ago, which kind of dates us both. But he sells his pecans all over. I stopped into the pecan plant last Tuesday, and he was getting ready to go to Germany to help to sell us pecans. So there's the potential for pecans. There's the potential for good for you food products. I think the native grape industry has tremendous potential. And then there's the specialty food products that are abundant in Missouri. The other trend that I think is incredible, we all know the local food industry, but what we really don't realize is that this whole local movement is cascading into other consumer product industries. This is an entrepreneur I worked with in 2006. She runs a company called Stony Creek Farms. And Stony Creek produces indigo, and she runs an indigo extraction company. So she extracts the indigo and she markets it. And her indigo ends up in denim products sold by companies for specialty jeans, including Patagonia. So she's really done quite well in not just planning her business, but growing it as well. Good for you foods, and I don't want to say it's just good for you to eat, but I think there's tremendous potential, especially for Missouri, with colorants and flavorings. As we grow in the food industry, there's niche markets that are developing, and I do think there will be tremendous growth in the market for local or for natural colorants and flavorings and other specialty markets that we might not be aware of. What can you do to start? So how many people out here are thinking about starting a value-added business and they came here today to get some ideas? Any wannabe entrepreneurs? Like, raise your hand higher. Okay. So you've got some people that really want to start, and I think that's so wonderful. So what I always tell my entrepreneurs is that you need to embrace the planning process and really turn planning into a discipline, much like you would turn an exercise routine or a accounting function in your family budget. But make time for planning and embrace the whole planning process. And I think once you do that, once you make time for planning the future of your business, then it all kind of comes together. The other point that I think is critical is that you need to assemble a team. Successful entrepreneurs, well, usually one person doesn't have the skills to do everything. They need to reach out to other individuals, other partners that can provide services. These would include extension professionals, lawyers, accountants, marketing personnel, insurance agents, and just a whole plethora of team members. So I always have people write down who their team is and what service they can provide, especially if you're launching a business and there is some risk involved in some way or another. One of the new areas that I'm adding to the list of who you need on your team is somebody to consult on cyber. If you're involved in internet marketing or you're running a business with any sort of data exchange, it's really important to have, a full gamut of practitioners on your team, including people in accounting and cyber. Then I also think it's really critical to be able to describe your vision. And I'm not talking about creating a 20-page business plan with a 100-page appendix. I'm talking about a one-sentence elevator pitch. What do you want to do? How can you describe that really briefly, really quickly to somebody that you're talking to in a line or over the phone, somebody that has only a second to hear your conversation? And then the other part of planning, I think it's important to write it down in a one-pager. Again, not a 20-page dissertation, but a one-pager that describes what you want to do, who you're going to do it with, what product you're going to add value to, and what you expect the outcome to be. So here we are at Missouri in the Bond Life Science Center, and we have a lot of people in this room that are here to help you. What programs can we foster to help entrepreneurship in Missouri? One of the great resources, I think, is financial resources. USDA has a value-added producer grant program. That program is open right now. The applications are due March 10th. It's an annual cycle, so Google USDA VAPG. MASBA, the Missouri Agricultural Small Business Development Authority, also has a wonderful grant program, and they have wonderful loan programs. They're going to be speaking later on today. They're a wonderful opportunity. If you want to just get your feet wet, SARE is a wonderful resource. And Jim Pierce, my apple grower, who made this wonderful apple brandy, is out in the lobby, and he can talk to you about SARE grants. So there's grants and other programs. There's also a need for technical assistance for entrepreneurs. This is Katie Commender. She helped start the Appalachian Harvest Herb Hub, and that business now is fostering the development of a lot of different entrepreneurs in the Virginia and North Carolina areas. There's a need for that here in Missouri, and I think that we've got the team in place to make that happen. Right, Gregory? So hopefully we'll be able to launch that project and get a program similar to what Katie has growing here in Missouri. The other thing that I think is critical is to foster connections. The connections might not be formal, they might be casual. It might just be person to person. It might be an email link. It might be somebody that you've met at the farmer's market. But I always encourage my farmers to get out there and connect with other producers that are doing what they want to do, to get out there and connect with service providers, to go out there and make connections in person if possible, going to visit other operations. And I also think there's an important place for Extension to play in getting a peer-to-peer networking project set up for practitioners in different fields. And with that, I'd like to say thank you, and it's great to be here.
Thanks so much, Ann. Yeah. We actually have plenty of time for questions. We're on even a little ahead of schedule, so yeah, crack it open. I think we'll be sampling some later during the breaks, both of the Earth Distilleries productions and Wood Hat Spirits. But please, we have time if there's any questions or some conversation with Ann Wilkinson.
Hi, Ann. It's over here. So I'm curious, in the last 5 to 10 years, if you've seen a growth in the numbers of individuals who are actually approaching you to try to realize exactly what you talked about today here in our own state.
Yes, I have seen a tremendous growth in people that are interested in adding value in the state and in other places. So, but there really is a vibrant undercurrent of farm entrepreneurship here in the state. Any other? Did I answer your question, Mike?
Well, yes, you answered it, so I could ask a follow-up, and that is if you have specific examples of we're talking about food and forest and beverage today, whether there are certain of these areas where you've seen more growth. We know that there's been a tremendous growth in the amount of chestnuts planted and elderberries planted and things like that, and whether you're seeing that translate into value-added processing businesses, collaborations, et cetera?
You know, I'm limited because a lot of my background is in dairy and meat and that sort of thing. But I do think, and so I have not worked with a lot of traditional forest products. I've worked with a lot of non-traditional products, but I do think there is the momentum for growth in the state, especially with the amount of biodiversity that we have in Missouri, especially in the forest areas. So.
Thank you, Anne. Sarah Lowe, with a kind of a follow-up question. You mentioned the growth that you've seen in nascent entrepreneurs interested in this type of business. Can you comment on the quality of those plans, the quality of their team, the quality of their vision? Is the quality getting better? Do we need to be doing more to get to better launch stronger businesses?
You know, that's a hard question just because of the diversity of the entrepreneurs. My clients don't approach me with a beginning idea. Usually they're a little farther along the path. And so typically when people come to me, they've already done a lot of market research. They've already been down the path. They can clearly state what they want to do. And many times they are really stubborn about what they want to do. And sometimes there's a good reason behind that. I showed the picture of Neil Moy up there, the dairy producer, and we did the market research and said, gosh, Neil, fluid milk's a hard deal. Maybe let's try something else. And he came back and said, no, I want to do fluid milk. And it's like, okay, fluid milk and ice cream are a great idea. But now he is going great guns with fluid milk. So sometimes when people have an idea and they have a passion about it, I've realized that it's just, they're kind of on their own path, and usually that trajectory is going to be up. And so if you have to put the brakes on for some reason, then that's okay. But typically, if they're really passionate about something and really committed to it, then it's probably going to work. So.
Yes, since you mentioned cattle and forest, have you done anything in the silvopasture area?
No, I've done a little bit with beef, with silvopasture, but not, beef and pork that are raised in a silvopasture setting, but no silvopasture per se.
I have a question as well.
Okay.
Can you tell, so sometimes farmers just want to kind of stick with just producing what they like and not go into adding value, but they would appreciate if somebody can help them. And then there are other people who are good in entrepreneurship, but they're not maybe as good in farming. Is there a tool or institution that can help to connect those people together?
That's a great question. As a practitioner in the field, I haven't really seen that, but I do know examples of farmers that are doing specialty products that work with existing businesses to co-brand. And I think co-branding a product is an excellent way to start the partnership. I go back to Jim Pierce's product. I know he works with blackberry farmers in the Kansas City area to create a blackberry eau de vie. And I do think that informal collaborations are one way. And I don't really know the answer to that question. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right. Well, yep.
I'm just wondering, in the case of your fluid milk farmer, you say these people are already further down the path. They're not just starting out. Is that maybe the fact that he's getting inquiries? People know he's got cows. Will you sell me milk? And especially with the interest in raw milk in many cultures.
So I guess a lot of times when people come to me, they have an idea, they're able to put that idea down on paper. And sometimes part of the process is doing, a part of the planning process that I do is doing the market research and getting feedback from the formal market, or identifying markets that are non-traditional that they could sell their product in. And sometimes when people do this, or when they launch businesses, they've already put a lot of time into their own research. So sometimes, you know, what I lay on top of it might not be any added value, so to speak. It might just be a confirmation of what they already have. So.
Yeah, I think we have time for one more question. I see a question there with Olga in the back. Please, go ahead.
Hey.
Yes, I'd like some, just a little bit of information about your experience with helping individuals with grant funding and funding.
With grants?
Grant funding.
Oh, okay.
And if, you know, if that's the major source of funding, or how they learned about
How they learned about the thing.
how to deal with grants and how to fund their activities, their value add.
Okay, I'm going to back up the slide presentation to this one. So as far as grants, and the North Central SARE grants are smaller. They're for farmer producers. And that program is operated out of the University of Minnesota, but they have a great person here at Missouri who's actually highly involved with it, Joan Benjamin. And the SARE Farmer Rancher Grant Program is a great way to get your feet wet if you're not sure about what grants are or how to write them. It's a very easy mechanism to use. And you can do research, you can research a product, you can research production methods. They're very wide open. The USDA Value-Added Producer Grant, there's two components to that. One side is planning, and the other side is working capital. And those grants are a little bit more technical to apply for, just because they require a little bit of upfront information, and they also require you to go out and get letters of commitment from potential purchasers of the product, and describe your team as you move forward. But the one thing about the USDA Value-Added Producer Grants are, if you apply for the Phase 1, which is a planning grant, you can get funds to help have a third party do a marketing or a business plan for you. And if you apply for the other phase, which is the working capital, a single individual producer, independent producer, can secure up to $250,000 in grant funds for working capital to help launch their grant. This is a matching grant, so it has to be matched dollar for dollar or dollar for in-kind dollar at the farm level. So that is a wonderful tool for helping to grow your business and change, and it helps grow with you. And there was recently there was a research study that was published on the benefits of the Value-Added Producer Grant Program, and they discovered that there was a great benefit for farm businesses that are involved in the program, and that it actually helped their survival rate. So sometimes just the discipline of doing these grants really helps you coalesce what you're trying to do and helps you paint the vision. And then it also kind of, I don't want to say locks you in, but it helps, you know, it gets you connected with outside people that are along the pathway, which I think is really important. So in my experience with these has been pretty wild. So I love writing grants, and I don't know why, but.
Well, we're very glad that you do and provide that service. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure working and engaging with Ann in this. You know, I knew it was on something good when we first got in touch, and we're going through the process about her being in participating with us in this symposium. And so thank you so much, Ann. And Ann will be around, so you can engage with her. And